Welcome to Central Valley Writers Workshop. Our Great Valley is home to many authors and writers, all of whom are looking for tips, tools, and techniques to improve their writing skills. We hope that you'll get all of this and more as you join us as we interview authors and experts on our show. I'm your host, Claudia Newcorn, author of the award-winning Chrysalis of Chronicle Fairy series, editor, freelance writer, and Modesto Bee community columnist. Today we have as our guests Maya and Toby Torngren. Maya is the author of the deeply moving memoir, Maya, the Story of a German War Bride, and I think you will very much enjoy their story and all the things that they have to show us. Maya, Toby, thank you so very much for being with us here today.
Thank you.
Maya, could you tell us a bit about your background and what inspired you to write this book?
Yes, I could. I was born and raised in Germany, in Augsburg, Germany. And when I was 4 years old, Hitler came into power. When I was 10 years old, the war started, World War II. When I was 15 years old, I spent my 15th birthday in the basement while my hometown of Augsburg was burning. And this was the worst kind of attack that we've had. Mm-hmm. And it was 25 to 26 February, and it was cold as can be. And I have to also a little story in there. Mm-hmm. And it's about teenagers. Teenagers are very fearless, but also not too smart sometimes.
That's very true. The two of them go together.
Yes, and it doesn't matter where they are. If they're in Germany, if they're here, this doesn't matter. Well, I was 15 in Germany, bombs coming down everywhere, and all of a sudden there was a lull. And the men, that was my father, and the men, they're all older men that didn't have to go to the war. They went upstairs to find out what's happening. Well, they looked, and we followed. There's another boy, his name was Hansel. He was 14 and I was 15. Just 15. And he said, let's go and hear what they're saying, you know. So we went up there and we heard them say, the whole town of Augsburg is burning. So he said to me, he says, you know what? We lived in a 5-story apartment building. Mm-hmm. He says, you know what we ought to do? We should go up in the attic and look out the window so we can see what's all burning.
Really?
So the two of us ran all the way up to the 6th floor and wanted to look outside and see what's all happening. All of a sudden, all hell broke loose. And the second raid came. And it sounded like the whole house was coming down. And we were just stumbling down there, you know, just to get down there. And our parents were really frightened because they couldn't find us. But we finally got down there, and they said, well, how could you do that? You know, well, we wanted to see, you know. That's
You're teenagers.
Teenager, fearless, goes all together. So then the next, I don't know how many, it was many hours that's happening. And then the next morning we got up, there was no light, there was no sun, it was all smoke. And since it was so cold, the actual apartment house nothing happened to it. Mm-hmm. But all the windows were gone. So we could not stay there because it was bitter cold, below zero. Mm-hmm. So my father and my mother and my sister was still there, and we took a little wagon and put our belongings in there. And on the way we picked up my grandmother and my aunt, and we walked about 20 miles with this little wagon with all our things to a village nearby, and that's where we stayed for a while. So that's my war story, but I have some other war stories in there too.
What motivated you to write the memoir? I mean, you lived an experience, I mean, as you say, you grew up in Hitler Germany from child to a young adult. Mm-hmm. What motivated you to take all of this as well as your other stories and do a memoir?
Well, I thought I had a little bit more to tell, not just the war story, not just the growing up in Germany. I thought I had more to tell, not only the story about coming to America, which was very interesting too when you read the book. I mean, all the things that happened to me. And then on top of it, I come from cool Germany to very, very hot and humid Georgia.
Oh,
So that was something else too. And I thought I could speak English, but when I got there, I thought they're speaking a different language.
yes, Georgian English
Yes.
is very different.
And they didn't understand me, and I didn't understand them. But I always had somebody to translate for me. And also later on, then we did this great trip, and I thought there was more to it. And I think not only our children would like it, I think it would be interesting for everybody.
Now, I've done classes where I talk to people about writing memoirs and teaching, and everyone wants to write about their life history. You've taken it to another level. You actually wrote it, had it edited, it's published. What made you go beyond this simply writing a manuscript which you left, for example, for your children and your grandchildren to read?
Well, I was really lucky because my daughter is a editor
Okay.
by profession
Uh-huh.
and indexer. And so when I finally got to the point of having a manuscript, it took me about, the writing took less time than the editing because she didn't
Really?
have time.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I fit you in. I just, she had her business to do. But she did it, and this is what she did. Another thing that was very important to me was when she edited, it was mostly punctuation, because punctuation I had a hard time with, because in my mind, I'm still do the punctuation of German.
Of course.
In German language, and of course it's not the same. So she did that, but she did some editing too, but not too much, because I wanted it to sound like me.
She kept your voice.
She kept me.
That's
yeah.
a good editor, that she
Yes.
didn't superimpose her
Yes.
voice over yours.
I
Okay.
didn't want to have it perfect English, because I don't speak perfect English. I mean, people always say, you have an accent. What is it? They don't quite know why, but they know there's something there.
It's mid-Atlantic.
Okay. It's somewhere. So,
Well, now, one of the things I was hoping to talk about a bit is, as you say, you've done a lot of things. You survived World War II. You came to the States. You're a German war bride. What I'd like to do is, you have these beautiful quilts that you have brought here, which are part of your story. And I'd like to have you tell us a bit about them,
Okay.
and explain how they came to be. Why did you create them, and what do they tell us?
it's all started out with Toby, my husband. He has all those ideas. He says, you know what you should do? You should make a house quilt with all the homes on there that we've owned. And I think there's about 10 of them on there. And it started in Camp Gordon, Georgia, with a little trailer. And at times there was 120 degrees heat in there. It was just unbearable. And all kinds of things happened. And then when afterwards we went to Michigan, and he bought a house there. He built that house with his father. I mean, from
Scratch?
yeah.
Really?
And then we moved again, this time to Lansing. This is Grand Rapids, this is Lansing. And actually, I have stories about every house here.
And that's part of the book you talk
This
about
is part of
moving?
the book, and they're all the stories are in the book.
I
So-
notice you have photos. When
Yes,
you look close in
yes.
on the quilt, those are photos of you and Toby,
Yeah,
aren't they?
These are the newlyweds here.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and this one we had the first child.
Okay.
And here, they're all, well, they're about, I would say, 12, 10, 7, and 4, I think. Anyway, this, like I said, there are stories for every house. And I will tell, as a matter of fact, I have several stories about this house. And I'm going to read a story about that. Then we went on our trip after this house. We sold everything and went on our trip, which I'm going to talk to next. When we came back, we bought another old house. He always remodeled or built.
Okay.
This was his thing. And then when we lived in Michigan, every so often the car industry laid everybody off, no matter where. Even like he was a designer, always. So he was laid off, and he kind of worked there for part of the rent. He did the attic, I think. You
Okay.
know, so anyway, then we thought, well, he's out of work. We might as well go to California. Might be a little bit nicer there. Well, he knew somebody there, so there was a possibility of getting a job. And this is the first house in Fremont. And then we moved to Oregon, and that's in Lake Oswego, Oregon.
Uh-huh.
And there's a big story about our cat in there, the door opening cat. And then we moved to this house in Hayward. Well, the cat and I didn't like Oregon because it was too much rain. He didn't like it, I didn't like it. And finally, my husband agreed that he would say, okay, we go back to California, which we did. We bought this house. And we thought we were set for life, but didn't turn out that way. The company went to Pennsylvania, and we didn't want to go there, so
Okay,
that took
yep.
care of that.
Understood.
So we bought a real small house. Where is it? Atascadero, right
Uh-huh.
here. And at one time, there were windows in the back. Do you remember that? When he pushed, everything went down. I mean, it was in bad shape. But he fixed it up, and we thought we were going to live there and renovate houses, but it didn't work out that way. So we had to go back, and he got a job again and went to, that was in Fremont again. Yeah, I had all the roses. These are our
Now
grandchildren.
you- from
Yeah,
newlyweds to grandchildren.
to
Okay.
grandchildren out on there. And then we thought, we had this bright idea. We thought we're going to have a house that, a spec house.
Uh-huh.
And that was this one. Only it was 1995, and everything went down and never occurred. Then in my book, I have made this particular quilt, I think about 15 years ago. And we lived we're living in Oakdale about 11 years. So in the book, the old version is on there without this house.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
had just the quail there, and so anyway, I thought I had to put another house in there. So I took it all apart and made a new house. And I want to mention that Toby did all the designing of the houses.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But, you know, I took artistic license and changed them
Well, you're an artist.
because I didn't want them perfect. So then, as I was making this, he said, you know something? He said, since you're already having everything apart, I have to tell you, I never liked the driveways. I said, what's the matter with the driveways? You can see in the old part has the driveways. He says, well, they just don't look like a driveway. I said, well, what should I do? He says, well, you have to slant them and make it look like, you know, perspective. So I had to undo all the driveways and make them right.
Well, and really, your story is about perspective, because you're bringing, as you're writing a memoir, you're writing about your perspectives and your experiences on life. What I'd like to do next is have you talk about the quilt that's behind me,
All right.
because obviously this has a whole nother life journey
Yes.
and a story behind that.
Yes. We start out in Michigan, leaving Michigan in December. You can see that it's snowing. We bought a brand new van, and we drove to New York. In New York, we went on a freighter. It's called the Visevica. And they had, I don't know how many, not too many passengers. So it was very personal and very wonderful. All kinds of people there. And this is, well, I think I might have to show you afterwards where all those pictures come from. They came from photographs that I have with me. I'll show it to you later on. This is a photograph looking out to the sea. And then we went to Morocco, Tangiers, Morocco. And then we took another ship and we went to the Canary Islands. In Canary Islands, their main export is bananas.
Uh-huh.
Everywhere you went, there were bananas. It looked very green everywhere. Green and blue, sky, water, and bananas. And then we went to a different island, and that's the Gran Canaria Island. And we went to, it was kind of a fair there. And they had all different kinds of things, and there were girls there that did clopping or something like that. It's sort of a embroidery thing like this. And I bought napkins, and I thought, why should I have napkins in a drawer? So I cut them up, and they went on the. So this shows that. Then the third island is Lanzarote. That's the hottest island of all of them. Then 3 months later, we left Lanzarote, went back. We had to take there to get back to Spain. And we drove through Spain, through Switzerland, and France. Actually, France first, and then Switzerland. And this is my hometown of Augsburg right there. That took me quite a lot to make all those windows. That was kind of hard to do.
Maya, had Augsburg been rebuilt by the time you went back to visit it?
Yes, it is rebuilt. It's in the book too. And then from there we made all kinds of side trips. And this is Rotenburg up to Tauber. And there, Toby and I and my whole family right there. And we went to Liechtenstein, we went to Austria, we went to Denmark. And there are all the cousins there. He had all his relatives in Denmark, in Copenhagen. And we went over to Sweden, and I bought this in Sweden. And then finally, when the money ran out and he didn't get a job, we decided to go back again. And we took a Russian ship. The reason we took a Russian ship is because we lived in Michigan, and it was closer to come through. Only the Russian ship went to Canada. All the other ones went to New York. And so we went to Canada, and we got off in Canada and then drove to Michigan back home again. And of course there was also, it shows Canada. We saw that on the St. Lawrence River as we went by there. You could see that up on the hill. And then back to Michigan, to our old home. And as you can see here, there's snow on the trees, and now we're back in the fall with fallen leaves.
So you were gone for almost a year then?
11 months, yeah.
I noticed the van appears in a number of times. Did you take the van with you as you traveled?
We took the van with us.
Okay, okay.
And the van came in very good afterwards, because we sold the van, and that was our down payment for this house.
And we'll be right back with Maya.
Orient House, family owned and operated since 1983, offers an extensive menu of Chinese and Japanese cuisine. Voted Best Asian Restaurant by Modesto B readers with 2 locations, 609 Tully Road across from MJC and 3318 McHenry Avenue across from Target. Be sure to try the daily lunch specials featuring garlic chicken or tempura. That's Orient House, great for dine-in or take-out.
And we're back with Maya and Toby Torngren. Maya, you have authored a book which really chronicles your life's journey with the help of your husband. But you've got so many stories from being in Germany, traveling around the world, traveling around the country. How did you go about organizing the story and choosing the stories that you really wanted to capture in your memoir?
You know, this is strange. It wasn't much problem. I didn't have much problems. Of course, the computer is the wonder part. I used to be a typist, and I know the difference between computers and typists. I don't think I could have done it without a computer. I sat in front of the computer and I started writing. And I know many people have said, start in the middle or start anywhere you want to, and whatever is good for you. Well, with me, I started in the beginning and I ended. It was just one of those things that, and if anything came up in the meantime, I would just put it in. You know,
Okay.
you can do that with the computer. So I didn't really have much problems.
So you really followed the
just
chronology.
followed the chronology.
Now, all writers encounter challenges as they're working on their manuscript. Can you share with us some of the challenges you had to overcome as a writer, and how did you do that?
What did you think? Did I have any challenges? Not
She
really.
just would write. She'd watch TV and write and quilt and watch TV and write. And whenever she wanted to write, she just picked it up and went.
Picked it up.
Should you sit down and get going?
Yes.
Yeah.
You quilted your writing and you wrote your quilt after a fashion when
Yeah,
you think on it. How long did it take you to write the book from the time you decided to get going?
I don't think, the most time it was when I did the editing and all this. Probably about 6 months maybe.
So now, was that from the time you had your manuscript and then you
Yes.
gave it to your editor
Yes.
to take a look at?
Yes.
Now, I know you said she has another job, so she did it in pieces. From the time you finished your manuscript to the time you had the book published, how long did that cover?
I don't know. Do you remember? A year? Yeah.
Wow,
I
that
think
was
a year.
really quick.
Yeah, a year. And I want to mention here too, I could not have done it without my son. My son Gary, he lives in Oakdale, and he did all the electronic stuff for me.
Okay.
And I'm a self-published by iUniverse.
An excellent house.
Yes, and they require quite a lot. You know, certain things that have to be done just the right way. The pictures had to be the pixel or something that I don't know anything about. He took care of all of that.
Okay, okay.
So that was really wonderful that I had that.
While you were talking about the quilts, Toby showed me some of the before and after photos of some of the places you've been. The photography in your book is excellent. You're very lucky as a writer that you didn't have any challenges. Now, you mentioned, Toby, that she quilted when she wrote and she wrote when she quilted. Did you have to create, though, a special writing environment where you felt most comfortable sitting down and doing your writing?
No, it's just we have one room where the computer is, and I just went in there. And I also tried to translate into German.
Oh, you did?
I went as far as going as we get married. It's very hard for me to do that because my sister cannot speak English, and I gave her a book, of course, when I was done, but she couldn't read it.
Okay.
So I translated it as good as I could. And that's how far. Every once in a while, I'll go back and do another chapter.
And then send it to her.
Yes, it takes me a while to do that.
Now, Toby pulled forth some of the photos. These were the photos that you used for this
this
quilt, correct?
You can see there, for instance, this one is really, and this one also.
Were the photos printed on fabric? Is that how you?
Yes.
Okay.
No, the photos were fit. It's
When you were
at
doing the
that time,
quilting.
I did that 15 years ago. And you couldn't get things like you can do today.
That's true. That's true.
So these are kind of a little bit hard. You know,
Uh-huh.
that when you touch them, they're kind of slippery. But that's how it was then.
Well, now you mentioned 15 years ago. I'm pretty sure you were both about 60 years young, but I believe you just recently celebrated a big milestone. You have celebrated your 60th.
Yes.
And you have a marvelous photo here of the two of you when you first got married as husband and wife,
Yes.
newlyweds.
Newlyweds.
That is a great shot of the two of you. Look at that.
Our son brought that in, and he had it made big. That was a big surprise when he brought that in.
That is absolutely fabulous. Maya, when did you start writing? I mean, you mentioned the quilts and everything else. When did you actually start writing your book?
2000. 2006.
So very recent. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's been in the past 5 years.
Yes.
So you just decided to put it down and publish it.
That's what I did.
What sort of feedback and comments? Because I've seen you at book signings. What have people said? How does that make you feel?
It's really, where's my, oh yeah, it's in here. It's kind of interesting that I have some, okay.
Some quotes from people.
Yes, some quotes. The following are some of the many comments made by people who read my book. I'm fascinated by your childhood stories as well as the pictures. Yeah, it's good to hear all this, you know. another one was, after reading Maya, I felt like I was part of the family. The next one, reading Maya was like sitting across from her and listening to her tell her story. I think this is the most important to me.
Yes.
I think this is what I set out to do. I wanted to write a book as if I was telling a story right then and there. Then I have one more, and she's a little bit more involved. She says, Maya could also be titled Never a Dull Moment, which is true. As a matter of fact, we considered that at first as a title. Her life growing up during World War II really gives insight to what people went through in Germany. Maya's and Toby's dedication to each other, courage and humor have carried them through many adventures. You can't help but laugh and cry with her through the various events.
Because a lot of our viewers are people who are aspiring to write a book, it may be only for themselves and for their family, or it may be something that they really want to take to the masses. Is there any advice or counsel you would give them as a writer to writers to help them become better writers?
I have only one word, start. And I have been trying that with my husband. And he has a lot of stories. The kids, it used to be that when they gave him a little bit of beer to drink or something, and he would come out with all those stories. And they said, he's got to write that story, a book too, at least the story for the kids. And I keep on bugging him, but I haven't been very good at it.
One of these days they will.
Yeah. I think the most important is, once you start, I think things flow. But if you put it off all the time and say, oh, well, someday I'll do this and someday I'll do. And I really believe that everybody has a story.
I agree with you.
And I have talked to people that said to me, oh, I live such a dull life. And then they tell me stories, and I said, this is a wonderful story. And they didn't even know it. And I think that's something to think about.
Thank you both very much for having been with us today. And I know that our viewers are going to enjoy learning more about your book. If you'd like to learn more about Maya Torngren and her book, Maya, The Story of a German War Bride, please visit the KAZV TV website, where you can learn more about her and find out where to get her book. Meanwhile, I hope you've learned many wonderful things from this quilter of words. She's written a very deeply moving and inspirational memoir, and I'm sure you will enjoy sharing that. Thank you all very much for joining us at Central Valley Writers Workshop, and we look forward to seeing you on the next show. Have a great day.